Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show. Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can grow and thrive. And today we're actually going to flip the script, and I'm going to have Dr. Jeremy Wise from Rise 25, who has interviewed thousands of CEOs, interview me.
Adi, I'm excited, and this is going to be an interesting and special episode. So if you're listening to the audio, I suggest also check out Adi's website and the podcast, the actual website, because I'm going to make her open up her screen and show us some of the behind the scenes of the systems that she helps companies create. Because, I know, Adi, for you, businesses really can't survive without workable systems and well-documented processes. And it's really the sexy or non-sexy stuff that makes businesses work. And it allows people, I know people even said this to you, allows people so they can sleep at night because they know if someone doesn't show up, you can hand it to someone else, right? If someone doesn't show up because they're sick or a family member or whatever the case is. So they can expand their business. It makes their business more sellable because they have everything documented out. So I encourage, check out more episodes of the podcast and bizsuccesscg.com. So open up your screen, Adi, and show us, some of the processes and systems that you recommend companies actually document.
Good. So here's an example. Okay. This is one of the softwares that I use in order to document. And we're talking before about, you asked me, what are the most important parts of documentation? So those are the core processes that I suggest that each business documents, right? So we have business development, we have HR, finance, customer service, sales, fulfillment, operations, depends on what you do, marketing. So those are really the core processes. Some businesses will have others, so that's where we identify what they are. But the way that we approach it is we identify all the core processes, and then we start looking at each one and identifying the core processes within that particular section of the organization. So let's take, for instance, HR. Everybody has HR, human resources. And the core processes for
So if you're, HR, I just want to point out, if someone's listening to this, she's inside one of the software she uses, and she's got all of these folders for each of these core processes. And then she clicked on the HR, which opens up into another list. So keep going.
Thank you, Jeremy. That's right. So I opened the HR processes because now we're going to look at the core processes for HR. So this is an example, for instance. So we have the hiring. This is more of the hiring part of HR. So we have the creating a job ad, posting a job ad, interview number 1, interview number 2, drug screening, submitting a job offer, new employee onboarding, quarterly reviews, benefit administration. Again, those are samples. When we actually document it with a company, we do a whole mapping of the process. We find out what exists, what doesn't exist, and what needs to be documented. But those are examples of what will be part of a hiring process and an HR process. So for instance, then we go into, let's take posting a job ad. So then we start documenting step by step on how we actually do that. And we include videos, we include screenshots. So it is very easy to see and understand. And if somebody has to take over and do it, they can do it. The other thing is, for instance, new employee onboarding. That's a very popular one, is how do you onboard a new employee? So we created a whole checklist, including videos, a welcome video, including a video about the culture book, including a video about the organizational chart and a step-by-step procedure on or checklist on how to actually onboard a new employee. So that is an example of documentation of an HR process. For instance, let's take now the documentation of sales. So sales also has the different processes that exist, the core processes that exist. And Jeremy, we made a whole podcast about that. So for our listeners, if you'd like to hear more and get more details on how to create a sales process, listen to our podcast on that.
Yeah, we went deep in the sales process and the different checklists, the different tools. So I know you'll give just kind of a broad overview on the sales now.
Absolutely. So this is an example of how we break down the sales into the different components. And again, this is just an example. We definitely tailor-made it and make it custom to each organization. But let's say we have identify opportunities or lead intake. We have qualifying the lead, prepare the quote, proposal presentation, and onboarding a new client. And again, with this, when we qualify the lead, we create the procedure, the step-by-step procedure. We do, we create basically like a flow chart, and we start with step-by-step actions on how to do that.
So go back to that for 1 second. So as she's showing you, she has the mention some, and then she goes deep in with every company and actually documents from A to Z every last step. So I really encourage people to check out that episode. But when you go into these sections, so go back to the qualifying the lead section. Go click on that for a second, Adi, back where you were. I just want to kind of tell people a little bit. There's a visual there, if you are listening to this at the top, that it's basically this map, this charting map, process map of the different directions it can go. And scroll up for a second, a little bit to the top there. Yeah, exactly that. This, what would you call that, Adi? Is that just a
flow chart? A
flow chart, yeah. It's a very cool looking flow chart that is at the top of this. And just briefly, what's the beginning part and what's the end part?
That is really depending on the process. So it's step by step. We have to identify always point A going to point B. So whatever it is for that particular client, we identify the start, the end, and then we identify all the steps in between.
Got it. Okay, awesome. So go back to if you want to go back to the core process, unless there's anything else with the sales part.
No, they all have them, in terms of the finance. Again, it will be broken to accounts payable, accounts receivable, bookkeeping, record keeping, financial reports, etc. All the different core processes that are needed in order to run the finance department. The same thing with operations. Again, that will be different from company to company, marketing, and so on.
So go ahead. We're looking at the core processes a little bit. Just can you reiterate what they are and what people should consider doing?
For sure. So those are the core processes. And you should consider writing them first in terms of like outlining what applies for you. Hopefully all of this will apply for your company. Are there any other processes here that apply? So those will be your core processes. Then go into each one of them and basically break down the main core processes for that particular process. And when you have that, then you can start on your project documentation and start documenting each one, as I showed, in terms of creating the checklist, creating videos, creating screenshots. So you have and eventually you'll get to a full documentation of the company.
Awesome. And if people have questions for you or want to learn more, where should they go? How should they contact you?
They should contact me at info@bizsuccesscg.com. Or you can also email me directly at adi@bizsuccesscg.com. Or you can go to the website and use the contact form. So there are a lot of ways to contact us. You can also go onto LinkedIn. So it's Adi Klevit, ADI-KLEVIT, and send me a message there. No shortage of
Awesome.
ways to communicate.
Check out the website, check out more episodes of the podcast. If you want to go deep in the sales process and the onboarding process, there are 2 separate episodes we did on each of those. I love talking about this, Adi, because this allows people to kind of see what are the core processes people should be documenting. So thanks again for having me, and everyone check out more episodes.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.